Good to have you here on this Friday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you were with us. A lot to get to here on the show as we get ready for another big college football weekend. We also have baseball coming up with the ALCS and the NLCS. We'll have that for you tonight with Boston and Houston. Braves and now Dodgers will play tomorrow night and on Sunday night to start their series. Atlanta with the home field advantage in that. We'll get to that here in just a little bit. We'll have John Lastinger, former Georgia quarterback, coming on. We'll talk Georgia, Kentucky this weekend. Certainly the quarterback situation where it could be Stetson, could be JT Daniels. No clear word on it. From Gators Breakdown joins us this hour. We'll talk Florida and LSU. Florida win pushes them to 5-2. A LSU loss drops them to 3-4 and probably puts Ed Ogeron clearly on a big hot seat. They still have some of their biggest games left in the SEC West to play as well. You're probably talking about no bowl game at that point. So we got a lot to get to. Our picks sure to go wrong later in the final hours. We pick some games coming up here in the college football weekend. But fellas, the matchup is set. We talked yesterday. Do you want the Giants? Do you want the Dodgers? Well, doesn't matter what you want at this point. It's the Dodgers that are coming to Atlanta to start this best of 7. Max Scherzer gets the save last night, eliminating the Giants in, I guess, controversial fashion. You had a check swing, appealed down to first base. First base umpire calls it a swinging strike, strike 3 in the series. What a way to end it, BJ and Ben. And again, I think a lot of people were hacked off last night. If you weren't a Dodger fan, saying, look, baseball, for all your faults, postseason baseball is great. There's drama in every pitch. There's drama close. And you're going to ring up an entire series on a close, on a maybe, and then you look at the replay and you're like, yeah, that probably wouldn't get called 9 times out of 10 in the regular season, much less to end a series. Tough way for the Giants to go out. Not saying they would have scored off Max Scherzer, but that's the beauty of baseball. You never know. One pitch, you look dominant. The next pitch, you hang it a little bit, and the game's over. So you just never know, but the Braves get the Dodgers. Tough way for the Giants to have it in last night, but we now know the postseason rolls to Atlanta.
Yeah, I think that was clearly the wrong call at the end of the game there with the Dodgers and Giants, but it's Atlanta, it's LA, and this is a daunting challenge. You are thrilled with the opportunity to be in the NLCS once again, and I think the Braves will be confident. They will take the field believing they are the better team, and they should feel that way. But when you look at recent history, at least from the standpoint of being a Braves fan, the Dodgers eliminated Atlanta last season, in 2018, and in 2013 in the postseason. And I think you look at some of the names. I mean, Mookie Betts, Cody Bellinger, Trey Turner, Albert Pujols, Max Muncy, Chris Taylor, Walker Buehler, Max Scherzer, like you said, Kevin, who got the save last night. It's going to be a big challenge, but with that comes a big opportunity. And I do know there is a part of kind of every fan that follows the Braves that looks at this and goes, we want revenge. You know, we were there maybe earlier than expected in terms of the rebuild in 2018. LA was the better team. Last year, close down to the absolute wire. The Dodgers obviously advance on. I think Atlanta feels like the balance, the depth, the talent on this team is comparable to what LA has. You will have home field advantage now. And guys, I don't know how big of a deal that is in baseball, but from a momentum standpoint, you're starting out at Truist. I'm excited, a little nervous, but I think Saturday is going to be fun. Probably would have rather faced the Giants, but this is what it is, and you have to step up and embrace this challenge.
Only in baseball do you rather, I'd rather face a team that had more wins than the team that just beat me. But I think, BJ, I think you said, you leaving something out. We talk about the Braves and the Dodgers. No, if you are the Braves, you want to earn it. I mean, this Dodgers team has been good for a long time. I mean, I know Clayton Kershaw is out, but when you talk about guys that haven't earned it, Clayton Kershaw, what was he known for? Best regular season most have seen in the last 20 years. Couldn't get it done in the postseason. Couldn't get it done. Finally got it done last year. If you are the Braves, you want to say, hey, man, because, it's going to come down to, man, who did you guys have to face? And those pesky Dodgers just won't go away. Now, Kevin, as you mentioned, who knows what would have happened if, I don't know, first base ump can, make the right call. Because this is the thing. I know I'll be harping on the umps a lot. It's hard to stomach when it's your team. Oh, I can deal with it when it's not my team, but what if it's yours? And human error is a part of life. But and like you said, Kevin, 9 times out of 10, you don't call that. But dude, it's not just deciding a game; it's deciding a season. And you just, hey man, that's it. He went. That game's over. I mean, so for me, I do think that when you think about this Braves team, earning it the hard way is what everybody has to do. I think I compare the Braves to like Philadelphia. Philadelphia went to what 3 or 4 straight NFC Championship games. They finally got over the hump, and who they had to play? New England. So it's almost like it's going to be tough sled no matter what. But I do think this Braves team is built for it. You know what the Dodgers bring to the table. You understand what that what that starting pitching is over there with the Dodgers. You understand that this team is top to bottom really, 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 really solid. But the Braves, they win their way. They go through free agency their way. They gel really, really well. And I know we'll get to it down the line. They have a lot of role players that accept their role. Freddie Freeman is the guy. But at the same time, you got a lot of guys that have emerged and say, look, man, I want whoever's at the plate, whoever's pitching, which there's one guy that we hope is not pitching when it's on the line, but unfortunately he gets paid to do it. But Kevin, when you think about this Dodgers team, it's always what do the Braves got to do to beat the Dodgers? And for me, they got to beat themselves. Like if you try to come in with a total different strategy against the Dodgers, you will get exposed. So what you did got you to this point. I think you want to, use that as your way moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think when you come and say, "What did we got to do to be?" I think that's the wrong thing to think about when you get in a series like that. Is what do we need to do to make ourselves play better? And again, sometimes just like football game plans, like basketball game plans, they look great until you have to go out there and execute them. Hey, make Max Scherzer work. Make Walker Buehler work. Let's try to get him out of the game in the 5th inning because of pitch count. Okay. That works good in theory until he throws the first 2 down the middle for strikes and you're in an 0-2 hole. You can't really be patient at that point. So to me, if I'm Atlanta, I think you go up and play the style of baseball that got you to this point. Are you the winningest team? No, but you are a dangerous team. And I think that is something that you can use to your advantage. Make the Dodgers pitch you carefully because there's not an easy out. I mean, not having Jorge Soler kind of hurts, but I think Jock Peterson, the Dodgers are well familiar with him. He can be very dangerous. So I would say the strategy is act like you are a dangerous team because you are, and make them pitch you accordingly. Make them play you accordingly. Don't go up there and bail them out and say, we're just going to go up there because it's Max Scherzer. We got to try to ambush him on the first pitch. And then, that all goes out the window. So I think if I'm Atlanta, again, I kind of agree with you, Ben, from a machismo standpoint. You would say, look, I want to beat the best. I want to beat the Dodgers. I want a piece of them because they knocked me out last year. But from a reality standpoint, the Braves haven't won a World Series since 1995. I really don't care who they beat to have to get. You know what I'm saying? Look, if I got to beat the Marlins 4 out of 7 to get me to the World Series, great. Let me beat the Marlins 4 out of 7. I don't care. At this point, you're arguing essentially over a team that won 107 games and 106. They're both awesome. Like you're going to have to beat somebody. So I really don't, if somebody says, well, you only beat this team. I mean, sorry, that's how it laid out in front of me. I can only play who they put on the schedule. I would have rather played the Giants, but it's the Dodgers. Go earn it and go take it from them and get to the World Series.
Yeah, and I think it starts with starting pitching. I mean, you look at what Atlanta did against Milwaukee, and the Braves were absolutely dominant, not only with their starters, but bullpen as well. I think you had a 1.54 ERA team-wide in the opening round of the playoffs. That is the best of any team in the playoffs. And I think I'm looking at Max Fried, Charlie Morton, Ian Anderson. I know Max Fried is going to start tomorrow night. Morton pushed back because he pitched on short rest, and you would think, Kevin, that Max Fried, if you're going to win this series, might need to win a couple of games for you. And he has been really cool under pressure. His composure and his consistency has been remarkable, and I think has been the catalyst in a lot of ways for Atlanta's success. You go back to the start of the season, it was not a great opening month for Max, and since that point, he's been about as good as anybody's been in all of baseball. So you guys know I think it comes down to starting pitching. That is especially true in the postseason, of course, with timely hitting. But I'm looking at Max Fried. I'm looking at Charlie Morton. I'm looking at Ian Anderson, all of whom have already had success in the playoffs. And I'm saying you guys are leading us forward. If we're going to win this NLCS, it's going to be because you guys set the tone. I think they're capable of that, and I think they're ready for that type of pressure.
I mean, BJ, you are winning me over with this starting pitching, but I go back to, I want to say, with the Kansas City Royals beat the Mets. The Mets came in with a better pitching staff, but the bats, and I understand you had the pressure kind of got to the Mets at the end, but those bats came alive. The one thing the Braves can do, they can mash. They can do that with the best of them. Now, I understand, you talk about this starting lineup for the Dodgers is going to be a little rough, but Kevin, it's easy to compare things to me because I didn't have a lot of postseason success when I was in the NFL, but I did make it my last year. Got to play the San Diego Chargers, right? San Diego barely beat us. A big reason why they did beat us is because we panicked. Now, we don't have the better team. There go Phillip Rivers, there go Sean Merriman, there go LaDainian Tomlinson, and the list goes on and on. They had Phillip Rivers, we had Vince Young. Vince Young was in his second year. I want to say Phillip Rivers came in the league at the same time. Phillip Rivers in his fourth. They were at home. There go Arnold Schwarzenegger, there go Sylvester Stallone. They're star-studded on that sideline. Vince Young panicked in the game, and he admitted it after the game. Now, that takes a lot of courage to do, but the problem is, hey, look, man, you got to find a way to keep those nerves intact. The Braves, just like the Dodgers, are usual suspects in the playoffs. Now, getting over that hump is going to be rough, but the Braves almost did it last year, and when they went up too, Kevin, everybody, oh my God, the Dodgers just went lights out. The Braves got to be able to say, look, man, we got to be able to play from behind or with a lead. I mean, we got to have a no matter what. We got to, understand that it's not going to be easy. But I just think that with this Braves team and the fact that they're coming in without, Ronald Acuna, but he hasn't been there most of the year. They got good at the shot as in it. Because like you said, Kevin, look, man, we ain't gonna make no excuse. Put him in front of us. Like we got to play who's in front of us. And unfortunately, if you in the National League, if you can't beat the Dodgers, you can't win.
Yeah, that's the way it's kind of been the last handful of years, and the Braves are going to have to go out there and, Ric Flair this thing. To be the man, you got to beat the man, and that's who's standing right in front of him here going into. We'll talk more about that as we go throughout the show. We'll come back. John Lastinger, former Georgia quarterback, going to join us. We'll look at the quarterback situation this weekend as Georgia and Kentucky, top 11 matchup in Athens this weekend set to take place. He'll join us next here on 3 and Out. Great to be here on this Friday, and John Lastinger is going to join us right here on 3 and Out, former Georgia quarterback, as Georgia gets ready for Kentucky coming up this weekend in Athens. Another huge game there this weekend for the Georgia Bulldogs. And John, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you coming on and joining us. And something that we've talked about kind of all season long. And I know being a Georgia quarterback comes with its own pressures, but Kirby Smart's obviously due to injury concerns or what have you, had to play Stetson Bennett or JT Daniels. And Stetson Bennett, when he's been in there, has played pretty good. You're also the number one team in the country. How do you think Kirby approaches that as this goes on with, look, there's a guy that obviously has a hot hand. We're the number one team in the country, and every game, at least for the next several weeks, is going to matter a whole heck of a lot.
Yeah, I mean it's an interesting dynamic to have, but it's also a very fortunate dynamic to have. I guess that you got two, quality quarterbacks. That's a good question, and I don't know that I know the answer. I mean, I do think it probably, is really going to come down to more of the team, and I think right now they have great respect for Stetson, but I think they also respect JT. And they're two completely different kids, completely different personalities. But I think Kirby's gauging it kind of on the team, and I think right now they, I think they're all on the same page.
John, when you watch Stetson Bennett play, he's obviously done a really good job. What stands out to you?
Well, I mean, I think he loves to compete. I mean, and certainly not to say that JT Daniels doesn't love to compete, but I mean, I see Stetson obviously physically probably doesn't have the tools of others, but he's just a kid. You can tell that. I mean, I'd love to know how many 7-on-7 competitions he's competed in from middle school on, because he just seems to. He's really comfortable in the pocket, really comfortable throwing the football.
Somebody talks about Stetson Bennett, they're talking about genetics most of the time. Like, he's not a big guy, but at the same time, when you talk about what he did in high school football in Georgia and what he's meant to this Georgia program, not just in 2021, but in 2020, what are we going to remember the most about a guy like Stetson Bennett outside of the fact that he's just not a big guy?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that that script's been completely written, but I mean, I just see. It struck me, they interviewed him after the Auburn game, and he's just extremely personable young man and just really candid. I mean, and just talked about how much fun he had out there playing, and that's, I look back to some of my rivalry games against people, and I'm like, sometimes I don't think back as them being quite as much fun as maybe they were. Even in games we won, I'm like, well, I don't know that was a lot of fun, but I'm sure glad we won,
John Lasker joining us here on 3 and Out. And John, you got to play the year after Georgia won its national championship. Georgia now at number one. How does the team, you think, deal with the expectations, since so much about Kirby coming in has been to chase that championship, and you've been number 2, you've been number 3, but you've never been that team at the top that everybody's now looking at. How do you think they handle that moment as long as they sit at number 1?
Well, I think we'll find out, but I do think that people are. This is why they when Kirby Smart was hired. I think this is where Georgia wanted to go, and try to take it to the next level, because we couldn't quite get there under Mark Richt. We had some really good football teams, but we just never were really. It seems to be the 2021 word is elite, and I don't. I don't still know if we're elite. I think we're doing some really good things, but got a long way to go and some tremendous challenges ahead of us.
Georgia's defense leads the nation in 4 or 5 different categories, number 1 in scoring defense and total defense. Is this one of the best defenses you've seen? I know a lot of pundits and analysts have said this is a generational group. How does this compare to some of the defenses you've seen or played against?
Well, I'm pretty old, so it would be kind of a pointless comparison to defenses I played against, because it just game has changed so much. And as Ben knows, the offenses have changed so much, and the rules favor offense. and I mean, there's still some teams Georgia's going to play, Florida, Tennessee, even Kentucky, that are going to be able to, they're going to scheme some things that are going to be, to be successful. I mean, more and more film that they're going to watch on Georgia's tendencies as a defense. So, I mean, you're right. They have played phenomenally well up to this point, but I think, the second half of the season is going to be more challenging just because of it's kind of like a Major League Baseball batter, that he goes around the league one time and he's hitting 350, and all of a sudden pitchers start studying tape, figuring out what he can't hit, and the next thing you know, his average drops to 275. I think, I mean, as a Georgia fan, I hope that doesn't happen, but I kind of think you'll begin to see some offenses move the ball more against Georgia. But, they just got great players. Defensive front is stout. And I just think they're all on the same page. They love each other and they play hard.
And John, coming into the season, switching gears to that Georgia offense, I mean, obviously, some injuries. They've been plagued by injuries, and you look at the fact that the situation with Stetson and JT, but it was so much talk about how big this passing game was going to be based off everybody was healthy. But when you look at Georgia now, they're not running the ball as efficiently as they had in the past, but aren't they still being led by the run and kind of opening up for the pass when need be?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, that's still what they want to do, and they're it's kind of a unique situation. I mean, they've got 4 or 5 running backs, so if you look at their situation, I mean, there's no running back that stands out. He's like, on pace for 1,000-yard season or anything. But, they've just had some injuries at the receiver position and, trying to get some of them back, so that's a concern. I mean, I still think going forward, we still need more healthy quality receivers, guys that can stretch the field. So, will we get George Pickens back? I don't know. I don't think anybody knows the question to that, or the answer to that. But and I did hear tomorrow they're going to have a couple guys that will probably be ready that haven't played in a couple games. So we'll see. I mean, I think we're good at tight end. Certainly, the McConkey freshman has been a great surprise for him. But I do think that's still something you got to keep your eye on if you have concerns about Georgia.
John Lastinger joining us here on 3 and Out. And John, you got Kentucky coming in on Saturday, number 11 Kentucky. You don't say that often when you're talking about football. What kind of effort do you expect to see from a team that is playing up in waters that they don't normally swim in when it comes to football?
Well, you're exactly right. It's funny. I've got some Kentucky fans staying with me, and actually more than a fan. He was the head football trainer there for. He left Valdosta State and went up there when Hal Mumme took the job in 1997. So he was that almost 24 years he's been, and he's moved up into the administrative role. But yeah, they're on cloud 9 right now as far as what they've been able to do. I mean, I don't know that they still believe they can get over the top and beat Georgia, but obviously they're doing a lot of good things. And so it's going to be an interesting game. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I scratch my head. I look at a line and think that it's 20 points or something. And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I think most people expect it to be a tight ball game.
You're our guest here on 3 and Out Dogs and Cats in Athens on Saturday. John, appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Hey, guys, appreciate y'all having me. Good luck to y'all.
Appreciate it. John Lastinger joining us here on 3 and Out. Georgia and Kentucky. Big showdown coming up in the SEC East this weekend. We've got more to come here on 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you here, 3 and Out on this Friday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Big college football weekend upcoming in the SEC as well. It's a big weekend every week, seemingly in the SEC. And Florida LSU this weekend. David Waters, Gators Breakdown, joins us here on 3 and Out. David, welcome. How are you?
I'm good, guys. Enjoying this Friday and for early kickoff for the Gators tomorrow.
Yeah. And again, that's a weird part about how this season has gone. Early kickoff for LSU and Florida. Who would have thought that would be the case? But how do you feel about the Gators coming into this game? I know they've got some eyes down the road towards Georgia, but certainly with 2 losses, can't be thinking about that. How do you see their kind of mentality heading into Death Valley this weekend?
Yeah, there has to be some sense of desperation here from the Gators. As you mentioned, 2 losses already. 2 weeks ago, you lose to Kentucky. Then you host Vanderbilt last week. And, a game that you pretty much just had to get by. That Vanderbilt is Vanderbilt, but you needed to see Florida come out and do some good things, bouncing back from that disappointing loss to Kentucky a couple weeks ago. Get the offense. You look at the game, and Florida they started the game off with a few drives on offense and defense looking really good. And they had a lull, and then Dan Mullen gets on them at halftime. And they go and have another few drives on both sides of the ball to really, clamp down versus Vanderbilt last week there. So just not the focus you really wanted to see after Vanderbilt, but you somewhat, or after Kentucky, after that loss, but you somewhat got it, a noon game versus Vanderbilt after that game versus Kentucky there. So, Florida definitely just needs to make sure they're ready to go play LSU tomorrow and not, looking like what they looked like versus Kentucky a couple weeks ago, and also like they looked like versus LSU last year when they came into the Swamp.
David, you have 2 pretty good quarterbacks there in Gainesville with Emory Jones and Anthony Richardson. Are we going to see both moving forward? Is Emory clearly the guy, barring something dramatic, or will you see even a modest rotation of sorts?
It's so hard to get a read on Dan Mullen now. He's going to do this, but I do think there will be that. You saw it in the first couple games. You saw it again last week as well. You didn't see it versus Kentucky, which was his first game back after he got injured with that hamstring. He didn't play versus Alabama. I'm talking about Anthony Richardson here. He didn't play versus Alabama. He didn't play versus Tennessee. Sprinkled in a little bit versus Kentucky a couple weeks ago. But then he got that third drive of the game that he got versus FAU and USF the first couple games. This was his first interception of the season, his very first play last week. Dan Mullen throws him back out there the next drive. Needed some help from his teammates. Didn't get much blocking up front to help him out. A screen pass that should have been an easy first down. Instead, the wide receiver dances around and gets tackled for a loss. Then a penalty the very next play, and then it's 3rd and long, and he doesn't convert the 3rd and long. So maybe this week, going to Baton Rouge, I think there is a role for him. He'll probably get that 3rd drive, but right now this is Emory's job. This is Emory Jones' job at quarterback. He's gotten better from the earlier parts in the season. You see something every week that you can point to as a sign. A couple weeks ago in that loss versus Kentucky, for whatever reason, just would not push the ball down the field. There were guys open down the field. There were guys wide open down the field. He either didn't trust his arm, didn't see him, didn't make the right read. Last week, you could tell it was a focus. You go and play Vanderbilt, and there's deep passes all over the field. Partly because you're playing Vanderbilt. Second of all, I think that was a focus coming off that Kentucky game a couple weeks ago as well. So he's thrown an interception in every game so far. He's got to calm that down. Emory Jones has got to take care of the ball, especially going on the road again this week. You want to see how Florida reacts to being on the road. They had 8 false start penalties a couple weeks ago up front on that offensive line. And it doesn't matter who's quarterback. Going against LSU, this is a team that struggles stopping the run. If you want to make the quarterback's job easier, Florida's going to have to continue that trend of being an offense that puts up rushing yards on LSU.
And even going to the other side of the ball, David, I mean, this defense of Florida has been playing well as of late. Obviously, when you think about the fact that, against Tennessee and Kentucky, they weren't able to stop, these screens, making open field tackles, but have been really, really good as a defense as a whole, regardless of, who's out, for injury right now. Talk about their defense and how well they've been playing. And, obviously they got to stick to their stingy ways going to Baton Rouge.
Yeah, Ben, they just got to start better. That's really what it is for this Gator defense. And I found the stat this morning. They're the 82nd ranked defense in the country in first quarter scoring against. They're giving up about almost a touchdown for 6.3 points per first quarter. And then they're the 3rd best defense in the country in the second quarter. and it's pretty average after that. They have got to find a way to get off to better starts, and that's been an MO of Todd Grantham. You go back to the Alabama game, they get up 21-3. You get off to a better start, you may pull out and win that game. So it's just getting off to a better start for this defense. But being you're right, overall, they're much better at defense than they were last year. The communication that was so lacking last year on the back end of that defense, you don't see that at all this year anymore. And then now you have Trey Dean and Rashad Torrance, the two safeties for Florida, coming off their best game versus Vanderbilt. And yes, it's Vanderbilt, but there are some things I saw last week that you didn't necessarily see before. Trey Dean's aggressiveness, Rashad Torrance coming down and making tackles. I think he has 15 tackles on the game there for the Gators and being really aggressive. Now the Gators will get Kyer Elam back. We'll get Kyer Elam back this week, and you've been able to get some young guys, a lot of experience, in Avery Helm and Jason Marshall, while Kyer Elam's been out. Those guys have really grown up a lot in the last couple of weeks, and now they'll play that second cornerback spot opposite Kyer Elam. So I think the secondary is getting much better for Florida. Up front, they're pretty strong with the transfers. Valentino and Newkirk and Gervin Dexter, the 5-star from last year's true freshman class, is coming along nice. So Ben is just getting off to better starts. I don't know what happens with Todd Grantham in preparation during the week, where it takes a little while to adjust, and you hope it's not too little too late when you finally make that adjustment. So I like the pieces Florida has up front and on the back end, and getting Kyer Elam back is huge this week. And going against, if LSU is going to win this game, they're going to have to pass the ball all over the field. Getting Kyer Elam back is important for Florida.
David Waters, Gators Breakdown, joining us here on 3 and Out. And David, you mentioned this team going on the road, handling that environment. What do you expect to see there in LSU? Because they're a team that's beaten up, got a couple of DBs that are out, not going to play, a team that's not kind of lived up to the expectations, and a lot of talk this week that if Florida beats them and maybe beats them pretty handily, that might be the beginning of it for Ed Orgeron there in his tenure at LSU.
Besides that Ed Orgeron storyline, you sure you're not talking about last year's game? Exactly. This is exactly what we heard last year, this team coming into the swamp and then the upset in Florida. They had some holdouts. They had some guys getting injured last year. They roll into the swamp in a foggy game and walk out of there with a victory. So, Florida can't just feel comfortable because of all the injuries and all the storylines following LSU. But it is true, they lost Derek Stingley a couple weeks ago. Now Eli Ricks is out, and another defender there for LSU. And, of course, injuries just all over the place. And it's going to be on Max Johnson now, their quarterback. He got his first start of his career last year versus Florida in that victory over the Gators. So you have to look at he's probably going to feel somewhat confident going against Florida again. But it's the early kickoff. You mentioned it's not the big game it has been historically in recent years between Florida and LSU. So you get a 11 a.m. local, noon kickoff, noon Eastern kickoff. LSU fans are probably slow arriving. So you're not going to get that Death Valley crowd that can really make a huge difference in the game, like those 3:30 night games that you get in Death Valley. But, this is more about Florida right now for me just because of what they looked like 2 weeks ago at Kentucky. I mentioned the 8 false starts, 15 total penalties. They could not get the cadence down. They could not get the snap down. And you could tell Florida was young up front at center, and Emory Jones was making his first road start. They never adjusted to that. And, the false start started in the first quarter, and they were there to the last drive of the game. So, Florida's just got – they need to work on themselves more so this week as far as, working on the cadence, getting the snap down, and acting like, you've been on the road before. You have. That was a raucous environment a couple weeks ago against Kentucky. Take those lessons learned from a couple weeks ago, apply it to an LSU team right now that is struggling. And if Florida does put it on LSU, I've had some guests on this week that they would not be surprised if it is a blowout some way, somehow tomorrow. That Ed Orgeron may be giving his walking papers on Sunday.
David, we're here at the halfway point. We'll start on the second half tomorrow, the college football season. What's the mood of Gator Nation right now?
That's a tricky one. They're still a little hurt from that Kentucky game a couple weeks ago. The SEC East is all but slim chance to go win the SEC East now. You need a lot of help besides you doing your job right now. And that includes beating Georgia in a couple weeks. And the way Georgia looks right now, not many people are counting on that. It looks like a Kentucky-Georgia battle right now. We'll learn a lot more about that tomorrow, but everybody's just kind of look. Nobody's surprised that Georgia's going to win the East. I mean, that was predicted by the SEC media. I predicted it. A lot of people predicted it. But you go and you play Alabama and you lose by 2 points, and maybe that win or close loss doesn't look as good now as it did a couple weeks ago after Alabama loses to Texas A&M last week. But still, you had a chance to win that game, so the crowd had got expectations up just to probably be a bit more than they really should have, and I probably did a little bit too. Then to go to Kentucky and play like that, and Dan Mullen can say all the yards and all that stuff. Florida did some good things in that game. As I mentioned, all those penalties just added up for Florida. They shot themselves in the foot and walk out with a second loss of the season already. So you were looking at the first week of October, and all your goals were going to be really hard to maintain. So now it's pretty much just trying to play spoiler right now. You'll take if the unthinkable happens and Georgia, Kentucky lose more games than they should, you'll take it. But right now, it's going out there in Jacksonville in a couple of weeks, and trying to play spoiler just a little bit with Georgia coming up, and then by the end of the season, looking better than the way you started it.
And David, I mean, I know you kind of talked about it a little bit from the beginning, but we can't just brush over the fact that this running game, Florida, the first 3 years of the Dan Mullen, he wasn't allowed to run the ball in his contract. Talk about how, they made a conscious effort to say, look, we're going to run the football, and they're doing it pretty well, being top 10 in the country right now doing it.
Yeah, but I mean, you got 5 weapons right there. Starting at the quarterback, you got Emory and AR, and Emory's running the ball pretty well. It's limited last week. You don't want to hurt you and run your quarterback a whole lot versus Vanderbilt, but you did see it a lot versus Alabama and Tennessee a couple weeks before that. He did a really good job of limiting his legs a bit and getting those yards added up. It made a big difference in that game, but it's going to be part of the offense. So you start there at quarterback, and then you got this veteran running backs. And we've seen it be a different guy each week, whether it be Dameon Pierce one week, Gleek Davis, or Naquan Wright. So maybe 2 guys in the game as well getting those yards. You've seen Florida be able to choose a different running back each week to go with, or a pair of them just make plays. So you're looking for a continuation of that. You've only had one running back get all the yards pretty much the last couple of weeks or so. So you're looking for that second running back to get his numbers too. And that's when Florida's offense has been at its best so far this year, is multiple running backs getting the carries, getting the yards, and making the plays there. Then I still think they're missing that home run threat. To put a baseball analogy to it, you got some running backs that hit a lot of doubles and triples, but you're still looking for that home run threat there. So maybe that comes around, but credit to this offensive line too. We talked about it all off season. This is probably going to lend itself to offensive line coach John Hevesy, to the way he coaches, the way he develops, and this Florida offensive line has now built some depth. Been beat up a little bit. They've counted on some young guys, but you do see an improvement up front, and that's where it starts. I've always liked these running backs. I've liked Emory Jones being able to be a running style quarterback, but it didn't matter because the offensive line was holding them back. Not so much this year.
David Waters, Gators Breakdown, our guest here on 3 and Out. David, appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Hey, guys, thank you so much.
Appreciate it. David Waters joining us here. We heard him talk about that. Florida trying to go in not overconfident because, hey, they went in last year and didn't get it done against LSU in a similar situation, but saying, look, if Florida wins big this weekend, could that be it for Ed Ogeron come Sunday morning? I think you might get an inspired effort from LSU this weekend if people truly believe that might be the case.
Perhaps. I mean, this is a rivalry game too. It's been a series that has been emotional over the years, but I do think LSU feels like they're backed up against the wall, and I think there's a chance they respond with a passionate effort, like you said. But Ben, you made a great point about Florida's running game. Right now, Florida is 3rd nationally in rushing offense, over 273 rushing yards per game. LSU is 3rd to last nationally with 83.3 yards rushing per game. That may prove to be the difference right there.
No, I was just going to say, at the end of the day, BJ, you got to give Dan Mullen a lot of credit. I mean, a lot of criticism going at the end of last season, but he did make a concerted effort to get back to the run the football, and 3rd in the nation. I think they moved in the right direction.
We've got more to come here on 3 and Out, including another early Sunday morning NFL game that you may want to look at just because you can't turn away. We'll get to that when we come back. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Great to be here on this Friday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. You can get up, have a little breakfast on Sunday, and you can watch some magic happen from London. You can watch the Jags go for lucky 21. 21 will win you a blackjack in Vegas, BJ. 21 losses in a row if they don't beat the Dolphins on Sunday. And a lot of people saying, look, Urban Meyer, you took over a bad situation. You took over a tough roster. We get it. But you're 0-5. And you haven't necessarily shown a sign of getting the right what? Embrace the grind. Okay, sorry. Well, somebody needs to embrace it. Apparently, they're not embracing it. 21 in a row, potentially, BJ. where are you at there with Urban Meyer if it gets to 21 without a dub?
I mean, it should be a really exciting game on Sunday morning between a team with 0 wins and a team with 1 win. So, yeah, the storylines. No, Jacksonville's just, Ben, you've said before, teams, organizations have to develop a culture of winning, have to understand what it takes to be successful. And Jacksonville is the ultimate example of the opposite of that. I mean, you are 20 losses in a row. I don't know what Miami's quarterback situation looks like. Maybe Jacoby Brissett. I know Tua Tagovailoa returned to practice this week, but I don't know if that means he can go or play for Miami. But Jacksonville's just got to avoid the penalties, the turnovers, the mistakes, the stretches of 10 minutes where you just get blown out. I mean, Jacksonville, you go back a couple of weeks, they were winning comfortably. You go get a sandwich, you come back, and they're down by 10 points. Find a way to protect a lead. Find a way to stay within reach. Right now, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of confidence. We know there's not a lot of experience. And when you combine all of those things, mistakes, you have what you have. So hoping for better, but I think right now you're looking for baby steps. You're looking for modest improvement from Jacksonville.
Well, BJ, I think you said it there at the end. I mean, you just looking to make strides. I mean, winning in the National Football League at a consistent level is one of the hardest things you're ever going to do, being a professional athlete. And I think when you think about this Jacksonville Jaguars team, they thought they were going to get their first win in Cincinnati with it being the 2019 National Championship all over again, and then it became about Urban Meyer, after hours. And then now you got Tua that if he does, I mean, BJ, wouldn't it be fitting if Trevor Lawrence gets his first NFL win against Tua right, when he made his debut against Tua in the National Championship and outplayed him? But coming from a guy who went from 4-12 to 5-11, I know how hard it is to win consistently in the National Football League. And when you're in a division that no one cares about, with a franchise that not a lot of people care about, that kind of stuff flows onto the team. Trevor Lawrence seems to be a guy that he has proven to me one thing: he is not a front runner. He doesn't act like he's hurt when he's not. He goes out there every single series ready to go, and that resonates with the rest of the team because he had to deal with losing, just like Urban Meyer. They had to get used to losing, but you had to learn how to deal with it because neither one have dealt with it. But BJ, you know what they got on their side? London. Jacksonville balls in London. Remember when Mercedes Lewis was in London, had 3 touchdowns? You know how many touchdowns he had on the season that year? 3. All I'm saying is, Jacksonville, think about this. A change of scenery is good. Now, they better see what the hell their owner is, because he be over there making a deal trying to not leave London because he wants to be the first London NFL franchise. Not going to happen, but I do think they got good a shot as any with a Miami team that's still trying to find his way. If you're ever going to get a win, it's going to have to be in London this weekend because that schedule only gets rougher.
Yeah, believe, BJ. Hear that Jaguar roar all the way from London. 1-16 is possible. Come on. You got it. It all starts with 1, BJ. All starts with 1. We'll come back. Hour 2 next. Welcome back. Hour 2 here on 3 and Out. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Glad you're making us a part of your day. We'll look at Tennessee Ole Miss. Interesting game in the SEC that not a lot of people were talking about. You got Georgia, Kentucky, obviously. Florida, LSU, a big one. Alabama, can they bounce back in a big way against Mississippi State and kind of look like the Alabama of old that people think they will? But you got Tennessee and Ole Miss coming up this weekend. Lane Kiffin going back to Knoxville. Going to be an intriguing ball game. We'll get to that coming up here in just a little bit. But first, it's 4 o'clock. Let's take 3 here on 3 and Out. All right, fellas, NLCS starts tomorrow. Braves will host the Dodgers. Who will be the single most important player for the Braves against the Dodgers?
Kevin, I think it might be Ian Anderson, and here's why. You know, when I first looked at the question, I thought, okay, could it be Ozzie? Could it be Freddie? One of the players in the lineup. But I think the Braves are so good offensively and so balanced that I don't think you necessarily need one guy to be on a complete tear. You know, at different times this season, it's been Ozzie, it's been Freddie, it's been Austin Riley, it's been Dansby Swanson, it's been Adam Duvall, Jock Peterson. You've had contributions from all over the field. So I think offensively and even defensively, there's a shared responsibility. But correct me if I'm wrong, I think the way the rotation is lining up, Max Fried is pitching game 1, Ian Anderson is pitching game 2, and then Charlie Morton will pitch out west in LA. So if you stick by that rotation, I think the Braves may need Ian Anderson to win 2 games or give you a chance to win 2 games if you're going to win the series. And he's kind of the man in between a little bit in that you have, the young rising superstar in Max Fried and the veteran who's done it before in Charlie Morton. Well, to bridge those 2 guys, you need Ian Anderson to be really good. And he has been. For the most part, he's been exceptional as a young pitcher in the playoffs. But I think given that he's probably going to get 2 starts in this series, you're really going to need him to be big and kind of tie it all together with Fried and Morton. So I will say Ian Anderson.
Ooh. I mean, BJ, for everything you said, listen, and I love what Ian Anderson doing. And BJ, once again, that's outside of when you send your apology letter to Allison Anthopoulos, send it to Ian Anderson as well, Mister. They calling him up too early, and this young man, 2 years in the postseason. But for me, BJ, it's got to be Freddie Freed, right? From his presence, what is it? WAR? Don't they call it WAR? His defense, his bat, his glove, his consistency, his clutch, and momentum. The thing about Freddie Freed is he means so much to this franchise because you expect Freddie to get it done. Everybody's surprised when Freddie doesn't have good plate appearances. Everybody's surprised when Freddie isn't clutch, you know what I'm saying, at first base. And at the end of the day, some guys, it's bigger than just what they do, what they do individually. It's what they mean to the team collectively. I think it's got to be Freddie Freed. I'm so happy that the last series ended the way it did because once again, we talk about a guy who still hasn't gotten paid, still doesn't make waves. And Kevin, he might be the most unsung superstar you've ever seen because he doesn't have a look at me, but he says look at me by the way he plays, not in what he says. So for me, BJ, it's got to be Freddie Freed because he affects the game in so many ways.
Man, can I go BJ Bennett here and give you 2 guys?
I
was saying this. And BJ can yell at me. No, it's fine. And I'm going to say 2 guys because of their role. And because they're both, I think, equally important. I will say the most important 2 guys to the Braves in this series, Luke Jackson and Tyler Matzik. Why? Because they're the guys you lean on to get you to the back end of Will Smith. They're the guys you go to and say, hey, we have a cluster of an inning working right now. We need you to get us out of it. So I think to the Braves, the 2 most important guys this series, Luke Jackson and Tyler Matzik, in kind of the same role of you get us out of the tight spot and pitch the high leverage innings to hopefully get us to the 9th inning in good shape.
If I would have said 2 guys, the whole office, everybody working here would have run in here and melted down. Anytime I don't answer the way that you guys prefer me to answer, I get it right away. We don't even wait till the commercial break. People are coming in here, handing me notes, staring me down. I'm having to lip read. No, unacceptable. You have to pick one guy. No, because they do this to me every day. Jackson or Matzik.
No. Now, if we ask a question and somebody goes
Tyler Matzik.
If Kevin goes, are we asking greatest or best? Then I start worrying. But no, BJ, I mean, Kevin is saying, look, Kevin is trying to do something different.
You'll never hear me say greatest or best.
Listen,
you don't have to worry about that.
Two things. If Kevin say greatest or best, or if Kevin say, well, that's triple chocolate. Exactly. It's got to be.
Triple chocolate doesn't exist. Anyways. All right, moving along. Take two. Let me say it again. If 6-0 Wake Forest were to go undefeated, would they be a lock for the playoff? Keep in mind, Wake Forest 6-0 for the first time since the 40s.
I would like to say yes, but the more I think about it, it's kind of hard to say yes, right? Because we've talked about this. I understand the college football playoff rankings are a new set of rankings that emerge later in the year, but where teams are in the AP and coaches poll are usually precursors within one or two spots of where they're going to be in the playoff rankings. And it just takes so much. I think I used the phrase the other day, thought equity when you watch these teams to move up from unranked to 23 to 18 to 17 to 15, that you almost feel like you're giving them too much to move them into the top five. I look at it like this. You can start playing the game of what if. Okay, well, what if Georgia goes undefeated, loses to Alabama in the SEC championship game? Is Wake Forest going to be ahead of one-loss SEC champion Alabama? No. Is Wake Forest going to be ahead of one-loss SEC runner-up Georgia? No. Would Wake Forest be ahead of a one-loss Big Ten champion? No. Would Wake Forest be ahead of undefeated Oklahoma? No. Would Wake Forest be ahead of undefeated Cincinnati, given that Cincinnati is number 3 right now? Probably not. And when you get to the end of the year, obviously Wake Forest can't help who they play, but when you get to the end of the year, I don't think Wake Forest, even if they go undefeated, will have a win over a ranked team. Clemson is not ranked. We'll see what NC State does. They're there at 23, 24. We'll see where they are at the end of the year. In the ACC title game, who knows who you'll play? You might have a win over a ranked team, but you might not have a top 20 win. I'd like to think it's as simple as go undefeated in a Power 5 conference, make the playoff, but I'm not so sure that's the case. I think no, it wouldn't be a lock.
BJ, when you gotta give that many explanations, you know the answer is no. I mean, it's a say it out loud theory, which is what we do every day. You know, say it out loud. Most people don't even know what Wake Forest is. They couldn't tell you who their best player is, and a lot of what you end up at the end of the year is the type of narrative and the type of publicity or the type of attention you got during the year. They get zero. You're not going to take a team that you haven't talked about at all. And I will say this: if the Kevin Thomas theory, if they're in the college football playoff, chaos has ensued. A lot of things have happened. A lot. We're talking about a bunch of 2, maybe 3 lost teams. Alabama done did something crazy. Georgia done fell off the map. I mean, I'm just saying and that's what I mean about college football is just because you're in a big time conference doesn't mean you're one of the teams that the world wants to see. Wake Forest, unfortunately, they're good in a down year for the ACC. Yeah, we were good. Well, who was good? Well, North Carolina isn't good. Miami isn't good. Clemson isn't good, but we're good. So who cares? So no, they're not going to get in for the same reason why a Cincinnati will never get in, for the same reason why a Coastal Carolina never get in. See, people be thinking, well, I'm in the ACC, and if you're not a usual suspect, if you don't have a Heisman Trophy candidate at quarterback, if you haven't been in the discussion of the ACC championship game as of late, you're not going to get in, and that's the unfortunate part. So, no, they're not going to get in, and unfortunately for them, they're superseding expectations. Yes, they're already bowl eligible, but outside of that, it wouldn't matter even if they go to the ACC championship game. It's going to be, Wake Forest won the ACC. It's going to be the Big Ten going to probably get 2 in, and the SEC will probably get 2 in, and maybe, BJ, that might be the reason why Cincinnati gets in if Wake Forest is freaking undefeated.
Yeah, we got a message. Yes, Stephen Kicklighter, Wake Forest is 6-0. You have to say first time since the 40s. Yes, it doesn't get said very often. But no, look, the reality is if college football played by the same set of rules, 6-0 would get you in, or 12-0 would get you in, but it won't. And I can tell you, I don't even have to look at the schedule. They wouldn't get in because they're Wake Forest. The end. Wake Forest, 2,500, 3,000, 4,000 students there. I think is Wake Forest the smallest Power 5 school in terms of enrollment? I think they might be.
Yeah, maybe Power 5, yeah.
So in terms of Power 5, I think they might be the smallest in terms of enrollment, which means what? Good luck selling them tickets to the playoffs, right? I mean, and that's what it's all about. Tickets, TV, eyeballs. Wake Forest could be the best team college football ever created, and they're not getting in because they're Wake Forest. The end. And that's unfortunate. It shouldn't be like that, but that's the reality that you live in, BJ. And again, I think you would say, well, who would their best win be? And that's a fair point. I think you look at it, and I think we'll talk about it in the picks a little bit later. The best team in the ACC right now might be Pitt, and they're not even in the top 25. And I think they're 5-1 if I'm remembering correctly.
And they lost to Western Michigan.
Yeah, they had a bad loss, but they're 5-1 and have looked really good most every other week. And they may be the best team in the ACC, and they're unranked. So there you go. As far as Wake Forest goes, take 3. Supposedly, potentially, it's fall outside, or as Christian has said, it's fake fall. Like you get those 3 days where you're like, oh man, it's kind of crisp. That's in South Georgia. That's really all you get. It's crisp, and then it goes back to 90 degrees again. But at what temperature do you actually get cold?
Yeah, I mean, when it is in like the even the low 80s or the high 70s, you can breathe a little bit. The upper 70s. I mean, it feels nice. I like cooler weather, but maybe the mid 50s. I start to feel okay. This is a little this is out of my element a little bit. I mean, when you're from here, you get accustomed to the 90s and the upper 80s. I think when it gets into the mid to low 50s, I start to look around and go, yeah. And Ben, you've lived in New York and all over. I mean, I know you've dealt with real cold weather. I'm just saying, for me, being from South Georgia, from coastal Georgia, when it gets into the mid 50s to low 50s, I start to look around and go, yeah, I'm not used to this. This isn't right. When it gets into the 40s and 30s, I'm walking outside with, 2 jackets. I'm wearing a hat. I mean, I can't handle that. So probably low 50s is when I start to feel it.
No, you start talking about them 30s and 40s, but then right here on the coast, that wind coming off that water, I mean, you come outside, you be like, hey man, meet us up here by the water. You got it, cause you get there. Oh no, and it's what you said too, though, BJ. You get spoiled living here. I mean, we started saying, yeah, man. I mean, everybody else, how y'all doing in February? Oh man, it's about at 65, man. What y'all doing? Oh man, it's below freezing here. I mean, I'm just saying, it's like living in coastal Georgia. It's like living in like South Florida, from a sense of, you from South Florida, and you go to a school up north, like I don't know, like a Pitt or somewhere. You like, dude, they really they ain't wearing jackets for the fashion. Like, well, yeah, if you're in coastal Georgia, outside of these sand ads, you got to deal with the cold like for a month out of the year. People put on scarves and people bringing out long coats. People lose their minds. I said, sir, it is 50 degrees. Like, well, sir, I said, why you got I got on 2 long johns, and it's not that serious. But yes, give me them 40s with that wind chill, that wind coming off that water. It gets a little rough out there, Kevin.
Yeah, I would say that it depends on your proximity to water and breeze. If it's wet and windy, that's not a good combo. You can get cold real quick. But yeah, I'm going to say it's got to be at least low 40s before you get really cold. And I hate cold weather. That's why I don't live up north. I can't handle it. I would rather be hot and sweaty in October than cold. No, well, Pennsylvania, the country's calling you, Christian. That's all I can say. That's take 3. We do it each and every day. This time we got more to come. We'll come back. Tennessee Ole Miss, under talked about game this week. Could it be a statement game for the Vols? We'll get to that next here on 3. Good to have you back 3 and Out here on this Friday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Tennessee and Ole Miss this week. Lane Kiffin goes back to Knoxville. It'll be interesting to see kind of the reception he gets there. But an interesting question here is, will Tennessee kind of out Lane Kiffin, and they want to go tempo? They want to spread the ball around and move it around. What kind of game do you expect there Saturday in Knoxville?
A lot of points. I mean, that's what all signs point to. Right now, you have Ole Miss leading the SEC in scoring and total offense. Tennessee, believe it or not, is third in both categories in scoring and total offense. Over their last 2 games alone, Tennessee has scored 107 points. Or excuse me, those were games against Missouri and South Carolina. Scored 107 total points. Ole Miss has scored at least 52 points 3 different times. So I think you're going to see big plays. I think you're going to see basically a basketball game, a Big 12 game. The 2 quarterbacks are both very, very good. Matt Corral, who may be one of the Heisman frontrunners, and then Hendon Hooker, who's done a tremendous job taking over for the Vols. Going to be a great atmosphere. You have the checkerboard scene at Neyland. You have Lane Kiffin coming back to Knoxville. I think this is going to be a really fun game on Saturday in the SEC.
I mean, BJ, you're talking like, you're giving them Tennessee boys a lot of love right now. And this is the thing about Ole Miss. I mean, Ole Miss is good enough to beat anybody they play against, and they're good enough to lose to anybody they play against. I do know Tennessee is going to be playing inspired football. Lane Kiffin seems to be, kind of getting back to himself a little bit more, not that reserved, PG, not trying to ruffle no feathers. Come on, Lane. Like, you're going to get paid. It's fine. Like, give us some bulletin board material. Obviously, Hendon Hooker probably should have been the guy from the jump from Tennessee, BJ, when you look at what he brings to the offense. And look, Tennessee, since, they've been playing some really, really good football. Give them credit. We didn't think they was going to, even be looking halfway decent at this point in the season. I do think Ole Miss is going to, I know Ole Miss is going to score points, but Tennessee is a dangerous team because when the expectations are still a years away, like, you're still rebuilding. This isn't supposed to be a year to where obviously they expect you to beat Vanderbilt. Obviously they expect you to win 6 games. But you're doing it in a very, very impressive fashion. Matt Corral, you could do anything with a quarterback like that. But watch out for them Tennessee boys, man. And I will say that, shout out to them Tennessee boys. Unis last week, they was nice. Don't like to give credit, but but when they earn it, I'm gonna go out there and give it to them. But BJ, could be a better game than we figured to be, especially if that Tennessee defense can get a couple of stops and probably get a couple of turnovers to get Matt Corral and company.
Yeah, again, BJ, is this a who has the ball last type ball game like we've seen Ole Miss and Arkansas go back and forth and do it? Or is this third, maybe early fourth, somebody kind of takes control of this thing?
I think turnovers may decide this game because I don't know that you're going to see a ton of true defensive stops, just given the dynamic nature of both of the offenses. And you have versatile playmakers as well at quarterback. Remember that. Matt Corral and Hendon Hooker are tremendous at throwing the ball downfield. They can also get first down scrambling and running. Matt Corral has 8 rushing touchdowns. That's 1 off the national lead. So you think about Matt Corral as being a guy that drops back and throws it 40 times a game. He has 1 fewer rushing touchdown than the leader in college football does. So especially in the red zone, they utilize his mobility. I think if you have an interception, maybe an untimely interception, a fumble, a special teams mistake, that's where this game may be decided because the 2 offenses are playing with such confidence, such chemistry, the momentum that they have, the energy that they have. Ole Miss, when they step on the field, they're scoring a touchdown. They believe that. And I don't know that that was the case right away for Tennessee, but now that you've had a couple of showcase games and you've really gotten the rhythm down of trying to run 85, 90 plays a game, I think Tennessee feels the same way. I think they expect to score a touchdown when they step on the field. So in games like this, you think about like an Oklahoma State you see every year where it's 50-45. It's often a turnover or a special teams play more so than a series of defensive stops that makes the difference.
Give Coach Heupel a lot of credit as well. Whenever you're trying to bring in a certain philosophy and a certain type of offense in a league that typically it doesn't go well because bigger, faster, stronger, what may have you in the SEC. When it starts working, that's when the buy-in only happens when you are winning games. Not because you are competing hard, not because you are out there being playing better you have in the past. When we are putting wins on the board, and you see the last couple of weeks what they've been able to do. Hendon Hooker, it seems to have bought into what Coach Heupel is doing. Is very easy to buy in when you are the starter. By the way, because you feel as though you're the best player to go out there and lead this team. But I just think that, we kept saying, like, who's going to be the guy for the job, the head coaching job, head coach at Tennessee. Now, so far so good with Coach Hyde, but we'll see, like, down the line, Tennessee will never ever get back to what they've been. But BJ, what would it do for this program if the if their old coach, is in the house and you beat him head to head with obviously you having the better team, maybe obviously the better offense, the better quarterback, because it's about having things to build on for the rest of the season. And if Ole Miss can take an L to them Tennessee boys in a year that Tennessee was going to be, trying to figure out whether they even going to make 6 wins, that's got to be very, very impressive and definitely a momentum shift for a Tennessee Vol team that's still rebuilding.
Well, if you want to talk about the ceiling for both of these teams, and I think the winner here will have a chance to do some pretty significant things. If Tennessee wins, I think it's a national springboard, because you think about their big performances against South Carolina and Missouri. That's incredible progress for Tennessee, but that's not really going to get on the national radar, right? Because those aren't the leading names in the conference. If you beat a top 25 team, a ranked team with a Heisman Trophy candidate, all of a sudden people all around college football are talking about Tennessee and the obvious storyline that you beat Lane Kiffin on his return. I think you're talking about that mattering for recruiting, that mattering for the perception and brand of your program and the confidence of that roster. Now, here's something interesting, Kevin, and I think Cam mentioned this the other day. If Ole Miss wins, keep in mind they've already played Alabama and they lost, but they've already played Alabama. LSU doesn't necessarily look like it's going to be the toughest game ever. We'll see about Texas A&M, but is there a possibility Ole Miss could go through this thing with 1 loss? And they would not, if that were to happen, make the SEC championship game. But if Ole Miss, and I know we're a long way from it, but if Ole Miss is 11-1 at the end of the regular season, do they have an argument coming out of the SEC West with their only loss being at Alabama for getting a bid into the college football playoff?
Probably not if Cincinnati's still there and the Big Ten's got. Unfortunately, but you can't just put everybody in there. But that would be a compelling argument, BJ.
I'm just saying. Listen. We are the king of scenarios on this show. BJ. The one thing about it is this. What's the more impressive resume? Ole Miss has 1 loss on the season, or Kentucky has 1 loss on the season?
I think it would be Ole Miss because they're coming out of the SEC West.
Yeah, but at the same time, Ole Miss has a better quarterback, and coming into the season, they were saying, what type of passing game would the fact that you got the number 1 receiver and it's not on Ole Miss's team, it's on Kentucky, that's got to be something. But hey, I'm just saying, this is why we watch, this is why we root. I do think that Lane Kiffin is doing an incredible job, but Lane Kiffin's offense is good when he have a dynamic quarterback, and he has that in Matt Corral. But I don't know, BJ. Is the SEC West what it's stacked up to be in 2021 compared to years before?
No, I think that's fair. I think it's fair to ask the question, is the SEC West what it was maybe a couple of years ago at its peak? But I also think if that's the standard, if the SEC West from a couple of years ago is the standard, well, the current SEC East is far and away from that. So interesting game. I do think whoever wins this game Saturday night will have a real chance to do some special things. Maybe that's a New Year's Six bowl for Ole Miss. Maybe that's a 9-win season for Tennessee potentially. And could Tennessee turn that into momentum on a macro scale where they're maybe picked 2nd or 3rd in the SEC East next year? Big game Saturday night. And it's amazing. So many storylines, Kevin. Many people aren't even talking about Kiffin's return to Knoxville.
Yeah, no doubt. That's going to be interesting to see how he's received by the Tennessee fans there as well. Quickly, though, before we step aside, did get a comment coming out of Take 3, one to let you address specifically, BJ, because I feel like it applies to you. Stephen Kicklighter saying, when do you get cold? He said the better question, especially along the coast, would be at what temperature do the flip-flops get shelved up for the tennis shoes? Because the feet are getting cold.
Well, there's a way around that, and I actually am doing it now. You go socks with sandals.
Oh, that's another.
What? Who am I trying to impress? I want my feet to be comfortable. My feet enjoy socks. I also like having the toe flexibility that comes with sandals. I don't like for my toes to be restricted. I can't move them. I want to have, some mobility at the end of my foot with my toes, and I also want to feel a little warmth with the socks. It's the best of both worlds.
Listen.
It's not a good look.
BJ walking around with the socks on and the flip flops and looking at you like, "Let's go ahead and say something." I ain't gonna say nothing. I mean, you are both hot and cold at the same time. He is lukewarm. BJ Bennett. That's what he does.
It's not a good look for who? I want to wear them for me, Kevin.
Ricky Waters, for who? For what? For us. Right now.
He said you look like a socks with sandals kind of guy.
I don't look like it. I am.
Well, there you go. There you go. We've got more to come here on 3 and Out. Stick with us. A lot more to get to. We'll have our picks, sure to go wrong, coming up in the final hour of the program as well. Really looking forward to that. We couldn't be any worse than what we ended up being last week, fellas, because it just was not good at all. Just at all the way across the board, hitting those spreads. 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network.
we're a football school now, in case you don't know. It's really quite remarkable, and it's mostly because of the last two games here. That Florida game, getting that monkey off our back, beating Florida here in Lexington, which hadn't happened in a very long time. And then the LSU game, everybody was afraid of a letdown. And LSU is not the LSU we know, but they're still LSU with a ton of really talented football players. And for us to dominate them, and we dominated them the way that we did, it's just the excitement about the football team is, I've been here 12, going on 13 years, and I haven't seen anything like it. Now, having said that, I think this will be a pretty tough game Saturday.
Matthew, you're talking about a Kentucky team, as you mentioned, that already has a win over Florida head-to-head. You're right outside the national top 10. If you beat Georgia, you're the clear, obvious front runner in the East. With all that said, is this the biggest game in recent Kentucky football history?
Well, some are calling it the biggest game, period, in Kentucky football history, not recent, period. I guess arguably you could say that because of the situation and facing Georgia at number one. Obviously, we've played Georgia a lot over the last few years, and they're always great. But, it's the first time two 6-0 teams and a number one have played, I think, maybe in a very long time. And so many are considering this the biggest game in Kentucky football history. Yeah.
And man, I mean, I know we talking about recent history. We're not too many years removed from this Kentucky team going 9-3. Coach Mark Stoops, man, why isn't he talked about, as much as these other coaches? I'm not saying he's Nick Saban, he don't have to be. I'm not saying he's Kirby Smart, don't have to be, but just talk about what he's done for a Kentucky program that is still trying to get out of this with just a basketball school.
Well, it's a great question. And the thing is, it's starting to happen now, but it took this 6-0 start to do it, and beating Florida and LSU in back-to-back weeks. The amazing thing is he has said all along, and there were a couple of very rough seasons at the start when he was hired, he always talked about the need for patience, because any program, you got to develop talent over a period of years, but especially in the SEC, you can have really good players starting for you, but you're playing Alabama and Georgia and LSU, and their third lines are five-star guys. And so working towards that has been the difference. And the other thing is that Mitch Barnhart, the athletic director, and Eli Capilouto, the president, they have given him the time that he said he needed to develop this. And I think now, especially the last couple of weeks, you're seeing all kinds of national stories about, schools going after Coach Stoops and all kinds of things like that. I think I'm really happy because he's a wonderful man. He's a really terrific football coach. And I know everybody here at Kentucky, even though it didn't start out this way, now is very grateful that he's the head football coach here.
Matthew Lawrence joining us here at ESPN Radio Lexington. And Matthew, I guess if we all had the answer to this, we'd all be getting paid millions of dollars to stand on the sidelines. But how do you score on Georgia if you're Kentucky?
Well, I was hoping you guys could tell me so that I could relay that to my friends inside the football program. I mean, I have said all year, I've seen a couple of Georgia's games. They're an NFL defense. I mean, it's not even fair. The statistics, I know, we thought it was good that our defense has been really good. And we have some really talented players. And we had 23 quarterback hurries. And we thought that was pretty good until we saw that Georgia had 109. I mean, it's a different, it's a real different story here. Luckily, the last game we played against LSU, offensively, we finally put a lot of things together. And you're going to have to play a absolutely perfect game against Georgia. You're going to hope that there are some mistakes made, although we haven't seen any really made by that Georgia defense. And Liam Cohn, the new offensive coordinator who came from the NFL, Sean McVay, disciple, worked with him for the last 3 years. He has really done wonders with just play calling, with switching things up and different schemes. And now, of course, you can do that and still get hit with an 8-yard loss because Georgia's defense is so good. We can't turn the ball over on offense. We can't give Georgia extra possessions. And we're going to have to play a perfect game, I think, to have any chance to win this game.
The line 22.5, the line in this game. How do you view that going into a game where, again, you're a top 11 team in the country and it's 22.5?
Well, I mean, obviously we all think that's too much, but that's based on what Georgia has done this year. And it's also based on playing down there between the hedges and 90,000 people. I mean, it would be hard enough if we were playing this game in Kroger Field here in Lexington. But I think a lot of that has to do with, the game being at Georgia. I don't know. I think Georgia, and I've said it all year, is the best team in the country. Even before Alabama lost, I said it. I think that's a lot of people are looking at that, including the odds makers, and going, they know Kentucky has to play a perfect game to have any chance to compete in this game. And I guess that's where the line comes from. I stopped betting on sports probably 30 years ago, so I'm not the best one to ask about this.
And man, obviously, Kentucky is used to, paying hundred thousands of dollars when, they upset certain teams and pulling down goalposts. You mentioned this will be the biggest game ever in Kentucky, Wildcat, the history of Kentucky Wildcat football. But is the world ready for Kentucky to beat number one Georgia? And what does the narrative, coming out of the game be if we say, hey, man, the Kentucky Wildcats beat Georgia, and we're talking about the football team, not the basketball team?
Well, this is what I mean. This is what's so funny. I'm on the air every day here, and last 2 days we kept talking about Big Blue Madness being Friday night. Nobody's talking about it. If somehow Kentucky were able to win this game, I don't think any buildings would be left standing in downtown Lexington. I mean, it would be this truly, we hear in sports a lot, when teams kind of with false bravado say, we're going to shock the world. This would shock the world if Kentucky somehow won this football game. And then we got a pretty good basketball team this year. Then look out. This Kentucky hate would be at an all-time high.
Matthew Lawrence, our guest here on 3 Dot. Matthew, I wanted to ask you about your acting career, but we got like a minute left, so I feel like we would shortchange you. But what's more fun, doing the sports radio gig or making sure David and Donna stayed out of trouble back in the 90s on 90210?
Well, they're kind of completely different. I'm sure you can imagine. Sure. But I've been very blessed to be able to have two careers where I got to do, not many people have had a successful acting career and then covered, Kentucky basketball for 12 years. Sports has always been my first love. And sometime I'll come back on the show anytime you want, and we can talk more about the acting stuff.
Oh, absolutely. We'd love to have you back on. Matthew, appreciate the time. We're up against it. Thanks so much, and enjoy the game this weekend. We appreciate it.
Thanks, man. My pleasure.
Appreciate it. Matthew Lawrence, our guest here on 3 and Out. We're coming back. Hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio. We're streaming live as well, ESPNCoastal.com, and on Facebook.
Yeah, it's really cool and completely free. So bring your friends, bring your family. The West End, of course, a great location right there by the ocean and a chance to celebrate Florida, Georgia. Now, there will be some trash talking, too. I love how at first it's, oh, man, the game's great, so much to be – and then it moves into, well, you guys did beat us, but – and then it goes back. So it's a lot of fun. My question, though, and Kevin, I know you're thinking this as well, is there going to be a post-event 3-on-3 flag football tournament? You could be all-time quarterback.
No, BJ, that would be you as an all-time quarterback, because the one thing BJ hates more than anything else, that is even teams. I want them uneven, so I do not have to play defense. No. At the end of the day, I mean, I'm not going out there because there's going to be a bunch of no, I want guys to be able to come back. I don't want guys saying, look, man, I want to come back to your event, man, but I'm still dealing with this torn oblique that I have when I tried to lay out. So, no, I think guys just showing up. I mean, I'm going to do my best. Listen, it's one rule when you're there. Carlos Alvarez says call him Carlos, do not call him Mr. Alvarez. I have been told this, so I'm going to have to make sure to put out a memo to everybody that's coming, even the fans. You call him Carlos, not Mr. Alvarez. BJ, I think he was talking to you, because if you go Mr. Alvarez and he goes mute, it's because he wants to be called Carlos, not Mr. That has been told to me. But no, it's going to be fun. This is my way of saying thank you to the guys that came through this game. I could care less how many catches of yards or touchdowns or tackles that you had. You made an impact in this game, on this game. So this is my way as a former player in this game to pay homage to the guys that paved the way for me, both past and present. So looking forward to it. Should be a lot of fun. Hopefully some healthy banter back and forth. And, hey, man, as it gets darker, and, and the liquid courage starts getting a little bit more filled up, maybe the enthusiasm and energy should change. But, hey, the fact that these guys are coming, the fact that we're going to put it on for the third year, I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Absolutely. And again, we encourage you to come out, absolutely free to come out and just enjoy yourself and have a good time and reminisce on some stories from the Georgia and Florida football game there. And Ben, I know you played in it, obviously, but from the last couple of times you've done this, look, I've just learned so much about other guys and their stories from when they played in the game because most guys get 4 shots at it. Maybe you get a 5th, but most likely you were standing on the sideline for that 5th one at some point if you're a redshirt or what have you. You only get 4 cracks at this thing, and it's a special thing for everybody that's been involved. So keep it on the calendar. Friday before the game, the 29th there at the Westin on Jekyll, the Georgia-Florida Legends Series, 3rd annual. Come out and have a good time with us there outside on the ocean side of the Westin. Going to be a lot of fun. We've got more to come here on this Friday. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network.